So the mashing is already done for you when you buy dry or liquid malt extract, and then it is either dehydrated or concentrated down into a syrup. And you buy that and you combine it with hot water, and then you do your boil and add your hops, and you've got beer. And the last few recipes that I've done have involved some malt extract to some capacity. A couple of them, like the fish brow and the Zeman Champion from Tuesday, were only extract, no grains. But if you are going to start with grains, whether you're doing an all grain or you're doing a mini mash like we are today, you have to mash those grains. Mashing is the process of extracting the sugars from inside the kernels. Now, you can't just go buy raw barley or raw wheat and mash that. It has to go through a special process called malting first. So what I'm buying, what these grains are malted barley and malted wheat. Part of the malting process, they intentionally germinate, get the kernel to sprout, and then they stop it from growing any further. And what that germination does is it actually activates enzymes in the grain that we need for the mashing process. So they put it at a very specific temperature and moisture, which causes the seed to germinate. Then they throw it in a kiln to heat it up to stop that process. And then if they just stopped the process and then dried it out and sold it, that would be what's called base grain. So Pilsner, two-row, pale malt, some of the German malts are all known as base grain, and that's bare minimum what you need for your beer. When you kiln that malt, that grain, to stop the germination process, if you keep kilning longer and at different temperatures, you'll cause caramelization reactions in those grains. And so you'll get things like caramel malt or Vienna malt or Munich malt, or if you go really, really far, you'll get like amber and brown malts. And those malts start adding new flavors on top of just that basic base grain malt that we use for the majority of the beer. And then if you take those grains and instead of just kilning them longer, you put them in a roaster, like what you put coffee beans into essentially to roast them for coffee, you get roasted grains. And so roasted grains are what are in stouts, porters, dark lagers, and that's what provides the like coffee and cocoa bitter flavor, and it provides sometimes like a bitterness from that roastedness and a lot of color. So for the brew that we've got today, we've got our Pilsen malt, even though I listed it at the bottom because it's going to go in last. But that's considered our base grain. That's just our boring, run-of-the-mill, normal grain with normal, basic beer flavor. And then on top of that, we've got this Munich, which is lightly kilned, nothing crazy. But Munich malts are used in like Marzens and Oktoberfest beers. Then we've got this Cara Munich 3, which is Munich malt that's been caramelized pretty far. So this is what's known as a medium crystal malt. And then our first roast malt is this Carafa 1, and our second roast malt is this Midnight Wheat. So these are all barley except for that small addition of wheat. So it's been malted, it's been germinated, it's been kilned, it may or may not have been roasted, it's been dried, and then it goes to the brewer in whole kernel form. It then gets milled, so you can't mash whole grains. You have to mash milled up grains. The reason for that is that you will extract sugars much, much more efficiently if the kernel is broken up into pieces. You don't want flour though, you want still decently sized chunks of grain that you can see. Let me just add our second runnings in here. So you're combining those milled grains with hot water, not boiling water, hot water. It's got to be at a pretty specific temperature. And because those grains have been malted, because they've got certain enzymes present, because they went through a germination, at certain temperatures, you can now extract sugars from the malted barley. If we used raw barley, it wouldn't work. If we used water at the incorrect temperature, it wouldn't work. If we used water at the incorrect pH, it wouldn't work. So the mash is very strict rules that have to be met, but then once all those conditions are met, you're going to extract all the sugars from the grains. So that's what the mash is. In an all-grain beer, 100% of our sugars would be coming from the mashing process. Today we're doing a mini mash, so a portion of our grains and flavors are coming from that mash process, but then a majority of our fermentable sugars are coming from this DME down here.